Hi everyone. Today's video is also going to be about education systems, but I'll be comparing the education systems in the United States of America, the United Kingdom, and Canada. I've already made a video about the education system in the United States of America, which you can find in the card above. I've already written an article about the higher education system in the United Kingdom, which you can find in the YouTube description. But today, the style of the video will be where I'll be picking out conversations in the new podcast that I released with one of my best friends, Making the Right Play, where the guests, the co-host, and I will be discussing the pros and cons of the different education systems that I mentioned earlier. The general understanding is that the education system in the United States allows you this large amount of flexibility to kind of like shop around for courses, while the one in the United Kingdom is a bit more specific, and it is for specialized learners who really know what they're doing, and that's kind of the reason why it finishes off within 3 years in comparison to 4 years in the US. Let's find out what Navidu has to say about this notion and whether he believes this is entirely true.
So the degree program obviously specifies what the library of courses almost you have available to choose from. But very rarely would I say, maybe never, is that library just courses offered by that department or that degree. Usually, across departments. So I think it's a misconception that a lot of people. So I thought of exactly what Ishira said as well around when I was applying for university. I think it's a misconception that people think the UK is very
Stringent.
where you don't have diversity to pick different courses and so on. People generally back in Sri Lanka, especially in high school, have this notion that liberal arts colleges and all of that is just a US thing. You can kind of do window shopping on courses initially and then choose exactly what you want to do and so on. And That's not really true. I think, and also that's great, but also the risk with that is the lack of kind of guardrails to make sure certain kids don't spend too much time jumping ship and not actually settling on something. So in the UK, I think we have the best of both worlds there. So you have kind of safety guardrails in place to make sure, okay, you know what, you don't steer off the ship too far. And if you do want to entirely overhaul your degree, there's a procedure for it, and generally in my experience, I know friends who've changed degrees in their first 2 years and so on. The support you get is really helpful to do that. But generally, you have the diversity to pick courses from across departments, be it business stuff, finance, humanities, languages, all of that, but still stay focused onto having the same core modules as part of the degree you applied for, so that you still finish within a 3 to 4 year time frame as well, without dragging it on for too long.
Now, I'd like to segue into a conversation I had with Ishira, Senith, and Holika about the three education systems and why that education system worked for us.
I was actually curious, the module structure, because I know Canada and UK have similar structures, right, where you apply to a program, right, and then you do your you have your course requirements, or you have your modules, right, basically, and then you have your electives, right, you take which you can pick, right. But in the US it's actually really different, right, because for most schools, you get into the school, right? You don't get into a program. You apply to the school and you get into the school, right? And you there's no you can choose any program once you're in, essentially, right? That's how a lot of them work, at least. And as a result, I feel there's a lot more freedom than having to pick. I don't know. It depends on the person's perspective, but for me at least, I felt the reason I didn't too seriously consider Canadian universities was because I felt I needed that kind of exploratory freedom, and it kind of paid off for me when I realized that I wasn't going to end up in my kind of current course to study. I wasn't going to be an academic in that discipline. It depends a lot on your course to study, but I feel there is a little bit more exploratory freedom, at least in my case. But how's it been with you?
For me, I think so. Canada has this mix of elements from the system in the UK, and correct me if I'm making any factual mistakes with this. I think it has the essence with the UK in the sense that you have to apply to programs, and you have to kind of there's this build up where you have to take a prereq, and you have this list of prereqs, and you kind of go step by step, and I think most of your degree is kind of concentrated on that respective program you applied to. But there's also like, let's say there are certain programs where like you have the flexibility to kind of switch, where like, because my friend, for example, like he started off doing economics, then he went to environment, now he's doing anthropology, like for example, and he just picked like his elective courses accordingly. But I think a lot of STEM students, like people who are doing something much more technical, generally stick to that route because there's a large amount of resistance to change. But so adding on to that, what I was very curious about in the UK was like, so the both of you like knew you were either choosing like politics and philosophy or like management, right? So like when you all were in that process, like was there any point where you felt like, okay, I wish I had more flexibility to like turn around, or were you like very certain that this is what you wanted to do, and like were you happy with that entire process of like going through that very specific route?
Personally, I didn't necessarily feel like I was in the wrong degree because I've always kind of wanted to do business, right? And I felt that this course would provide me with like a holistic view of how to a holistic understanding of how a business is run, etc., that sort of thing. I just wanted that general what do you say foundation built within me, then I can later on build on a business of my own in the future. So personally, I didn't feel that other degrees would necessarily help me in that way. That's kind of why I stuck to management. But I also felt that if there was some sort of, but I felt like the course was lacking like practical skills that they could have given us. In generally, I didn't necessarily feel that I was in the wrong course, I would say, because I kind of know what I want to do later on, and there's nothing else that would make me happy,
would satisfy you,
or nothing else. Exactly.
Senith, where were you? Because I know on Senith, like you had a lot of interest like going in, but but you also chose like this kind of like the politics and philosophy route. I was wondering if what your thoughts were.
So it's a joint honors course, right? So I'm not doing one subject, but I'm doing two. So there's that sort of diversity that stops everything from getting boring.
Okay.
Yeah, and I really love politics and philosophy. So the lack of choice wasn't a big problem for me.
Okay.
Because I really enjoyed all the compulsory modules that I had to do. But also I had quite a lot of choice in my final year.
Okay.
I had the option of selecting up to half my modules from another department.
Okay.
And I did management modules as well. So in my final year, I had choice. I have choice. And all my management modules start next term. So yeah, let's see how it goes.
The conclusion I have through these discussions and the other articles I've kind of written is that the application process and the way you get into these universities and the philosophy of these universities and the way they function are a bit different. So in the US, you apply to the entire school. In Canada, you apply to a faculty. And in the United Kingdom, you apply to a program in a faculty. So these are like three different levels of kind of like flexibility, obviously. To me, I think the Canadian education system worked because I get to have a chance to kind of change things within my domain of subjects. But in the UK, for example, it still doesn't mean that you don't learn things outside your major. You can take classes outside your field. But like Navidu said, it gives you this decent part to kind of go on where you won't be like shopping for things rather too much, and you could have like a focused kind of outcome from your degree. But for people in the US, like, if you have this urge to kind of really explore and figure out what kind of academic space you fit in, I think being in the US is a bit more safer in terms, or like it's just easier for someone who wants to explore, who doesn't really know what exactly they want to achieve with their degree, because you're not supposed to know these things. I think people really kind of like figure themselves out a lot in college. So there are like three different degrees of like flexibility, like I said before, and whatever you choose, you need to kind of weigh in the pros and cons and understand who you are and whether this system truly fits your understanding. I think that's the first kind of filter that you need to have with choosing your universities, because if your education system doesn't really work for you, it's not going to give you the educational kind of expectations you have. But I personally think if you're determined and if you make a wise choice about these education systems, there is a very low chance that things might go wrong. So I don't think you should kind of like be extremely stressed about it. It's just sometimes knowing the differences with these education systems is good to know what ways you could succeed in that respective education system if you do get there. Because I applied to the one in the US, the one in the UK, and the one in Canada, and I'm sure that regardless of where I would have ended up, I would have somehow found a way to be successful in my definition of success. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to cover through this video, and I hope that was informative, and I hope this would help someone kind of make a better decision about their careers moving forward. Thank you.